Hiya there, it's HYZ Marie here, and I've been making ref sheets for about 4 years. And in that time, I've picked up a few tips and tricks, ranging from layout to text to the differences between species. I'll be assuming throughout this video that you already have a character design in mind and are just figuring out how best to showcase it. If you need help with the design process for the character in particular, check out my previous video on the topic, which I'll link in the description. So without further ado, let's jump right in. And while we talk about this, enjoy the speed paint of a recent ref sheet for my Twilioc Nevru, which I also use as a method to learn Krita, so you'll see my process change a lot here. This drawing took me around 8 hours, so enjoy the blood, sweat, tears, and pain of learning a new software. Today, we're going to talk about a few things, namely a ref sheet's purpose, showcasing your OC's body layout, dealing with asymmetrical features, clarifying unusual features, whether and where to include text, dealing with jewelry and other small details, color palettes, and appearance changes throughout their story. First and foremost, we need to go over the purpose of a ref sheet. For something like Artfight, the purpose is to allow other people to draw your character accurately, and that's the scenario we'll be focusing on here. But for Artfight, a ref sheet has another purpose, to sell your character's concept. With these two ideas in mind, you'll want to make your reference detailed and thorough, but cohesive and not overwhelming. While the ref sheet itself isn't the space for lore dumping, and I'll talk about that more later, it is a way to show off the aesthetic of your character and therefore their personality. Make the background match their aesthetic and choose a font that matches their personality. I often choose an imposing serif font like Academy Engraved or Copperplate for characters who are ancient and powerful, a sharp-edged font like Banshee or Nyx for a creepy or menacing character, or a graceful handwriting font like Tangerine or Brush Script for a more friendly OC. Just do not use Jokerman, Comic Sans, or Papyrus, whatever you do. Those fonts are a sin against humanity and must be purged. Oh, there goes my graphic design background again. Next section. For most characters, the body plan you're using will be either humanoid, walking upright with 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head at the top of the body, or quadrupedal, walking on 4 legs with a head at the front of the body. These 2 main body plans need to be addressed in different ways. First, you want to make sure that the viewer can see all of your OC's limbs very clearly, even if they're missing some. Quadrupeds generally should be showcased in a side view first, as that's visually the simplest and clearest way to depict them. If you're worried about people missing some facial details that would best be viewed from the front, like for some of my characters who have a third eye in their forehead, then add a view of the head facing forward as a separate drawing on the same page. Make sure to show the legs on both sides. If there aren't major differences between the right and left legs, then you can get away with just posing your character so that their legs don't entirely overlap each other. Do make sure to show them standing and not sitting, as most quadrupeds' hind legs change shape drastically when the creature sits, making the leg shape less clear. For humanoids though, you should usually include a front and a back view. This is especially useful as it doesn't really let you hand-wave the logic of how certain outfits or hairstyles work, and if your OC has extra appendages like wings or a tail, it allows you to show how those connect to the character's back and interact with any clothing they wear. If your humanoid OC has a snout, maybe they're a dragonborn from D&D for example, then follow the quadruped guidelines with their face. Otherwise, I'd recommend that you give them a slight 3/4 view. This will let you not struggle as hard with symmetry, show how your character's facial features would work in 3 dimensions, and make them look more visually interesting. Lastly, what if your character has wings? Winged species are very popular for OCs, and for good reason. Flying is cool. Whether it's a dragon, an Aarakocra, or a species of your own, if a character has wings, those need to be given some thought. Usually wings look different on the ventral or belly-facing side than they do on the dorsal or back-facing side. They can also be obscured by the back and cover it up in turn, and they take up huge amounts of space if they're anywhere close to a reasonable size for flight. My way of dealing with wings is this. For a dragon character, show their wings lifted high to not obscure the back as heavily, but don't chop them off. Doing that can make it hard to see what size the wings are relative to the creature's body, and anything directly behind the wings usually isn't important on a dragon. If there's a detail there that you don't want people to miss, show that area of the back from above in a separate shot. For a humanoid, wings become a problem very quickly, as large wings can make it so you either have very little room for clarifying details, or have to size down your character so that their face becomes much harder to read. I always draw winged humanoid OCs on their refs with one wing furled and one outstretched, which also allows the viewer to see how the wing flexes. If your character has a tail, which would often realistically be the case to stabilize them in flight, then make the tail point in the same direction as the spread wing. For any character with wings, regardless of their other features, you'll want to make a separate drawing of the wings, labeling the ventral and dorsal sides. Make sure to include the shoulders in that shot too, so that the viewer can see how any wing membranes connect to the body. If your character has more than one set of wings, this will also let people see how the fore and hind wings overlap each other. Remember though that your OC's full body portrait should be the main focus. Everything else is supplementary to that. Asymmetrical features can cause some problems for your ref sheets. Say your character has a scar on only one side of their face, earrings that are different on each side, or a torn wing. All of these can make things difficult for others seeking to draw your OC. The solution is simple: draw both sides separately, in their own drawing. If your OC has a scar on one side of their face, for instance, draw both sides of their face and position them on the rough sheet near each other. Some OCs have features that aren't normal for their species, or that aren't commonly seen in media in general. Make sure to highlight these differences and make them clearly visible. Also, label them. Label everything. If certain parts of your OC are normally hidden, show them in a separate shot. See, your character always wears a cloak or shawl that obscures their body. You'll still want to show what they would look like without it, so that people can see how the body would move. I have one OC, for instance, with animal ears, where I had to specify that she does not have human ears by showing her pushing some hair to the side. And two who always wear shawls and needed their bodies to be shown in a separate shot. With text, of course, that shows that they don't actually ever look like this, but this was just showing what looked like underneath. Text is something that becomes kind of difficult on ref sheets. Some people like to put the character's backstory in a blurb on the ref sheet, and I used to be one of them. Don't do this. It takes up valuable space that would better be used showing design details. The ref sheet is for design, not story, although design should reflect the story. However, this doesn't mean that your ref sheet should never include text. First, you want to put your OC's name and species clearly visible as a sort of title. You can also turn the species name into a very short blurb, something like a title that describes them, like Inkling Idol or Zone Ice Age of Earth. Keep this to 2 to 4 words below their name in a smaller font size. Another good place for text in your ref sheet is labels. Label everything. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but words are more clear in meaning sometimes than images. Pointing out details is a great idea. Anything that might possibly be missed or misinterpreted should get a short label pointing it out. Lastly, for your text, you want it to be a color that contrasts with the background, and you'll want your character to clearly show up against the background. If you're only going to use this digitally with no plans to print it, then you can use whatever background color you like. I usually also include a subtle pattern to break up the solid color, but you should make sure to not let the background get too noisy. Then make your text contrast your background. I usually color pick from the OC themselves to color the text, which for me often results on dark browns or blues on light backgrounds, or bright yellows on dark backgrounds. The most important thing is that your text is readable and adds to the image rather than distracting from it. What if your OC has parts of their appearance that are really small? Maybe they have intricate jewelry, tattoos, or a pattern on their clothing. Well, like everything else, draw this in a separate shot on the same page. For small details, enlarge them in this shot to make them clearly visible. For clothing patterns, tattoos, or other 2D designs on top of your character, you want to draw them flat without the deformation they experience from being on a 3-dimensional body, and label them something like pattern on skirt or arm tattoo, so people know where this decoration goes. For color palettes, always include them. This goes double if your character has any gradients, colors that are only slightly different from each other, or partially transparent details like insect wings, veils, or glasses, which all make color picking from the character themselves harder. You should also make sure that the color palette includes blocks of solid color that are big enough to be color picked from on a digital platform, even if the edges get messed up by compression, which can and does happen, and that they're labeled if where the color goes is unclear. I usually don't label my color palettes because so many colors are reused to get the palette clean and focused, which means that I'd have to put like 5 things on the label. But if you do have a lot of colors that are for specific areas, doing this is a very good idea. If you do have partially transparent spots, Show the color swatch at full opacity, but label these colors with the percent opacity you use. This doesn't mean you're necessarily being stifling or exclusive by only allowing that exact opacity or gatekeeping for traditional artists. It means that artists who need it can see roughly where to put their opacity slider. If someone doesn't want to listen to the exact number, they probably won't anyway. No need to take the information away from those who do want it. Lastly, there's no need to keep it to circles or squares. As long as the shape is big and solid, then you're fine. I've used simple flower shapes, diamonds, ink splotches, and even Triforce shapes for color picking on references before. As long as the shape is big enough and doesn't have much variation, it'll work fine. The last thing we need to worry about is when your character's appearance changes throughout their story. If your character is a shapeshifter, I'd recommend putting the shapes they use most often labeled as X form, like one I have who has an elf form and a snake form, but label their original appearance as true form. If the instead has a series of events that change their appearance over time, a progression could be helpful to show, like how one of my OCs has their regular appearance, a corrupted version, and a ghost form. Put these appearances like a before and after with notes as to which order they go in, but you don't need to put all the lore reasons why this happened. You can put an overview of when and why their appearance changed as part of the character description, but leave it off the ref sheet. And with all that, I hope you're equipped to go and give your OCs the beautiful reference sheets they deserve, so people can have just as much fun drawing them as you do. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now!